Okay, so... All right, so what's the order of how we're doing? Before we had an order, where, Mike would say, what's the...
the order of the panel altogether?
Yeah, because like right now...
Steampunk 101, then we go into costuming,
yeah.
then we go into props, then Q&A.
Okay.
I don't know.
So then is it just the three of us doing it then?
God, I hope not. Where's Mike?
I don't know.
He's supposed to be the head of this. What? I thought someone was. We'll see you later. Did you want this chair or?
I can go to
I showed up and was like, where's everybody?
Couldn't get anybody to take over from my booth.
I just kind of wandered off.
Hello, testing.
Okay. Looks like the doors are closed now, so we might as well get started.
Excellent. Let's do this.
Welcome to an introduction to steampunk. We're going to have approximately an hour and a half of talking, and then some question and answers, and if you want, we have some stuff for touch and feely. I should introduce myself. I'm Mike Johnson. I run the Calgary Steampunk Assemblage, which is a club of about 140 members in Calgary. We're very active, and we do lots of steampunk things. And hopefully we can explain a little bit of what we do and how we do it to you guys. I'll let my fellow panelists introduce themselves across the board.
All right. I'm Andrew Wong, but everyone just calls me Doc. Hi.
I'm Stephen Wallace, but my call name is Smithy.
Is this even on? I'm Stuart McPhee, but I normally go by Dr. Adler.
Okay, so obviously a lot of you, I see a few of you actually in steampunk outfits, and the rest of you have at least heard of the term before. It has become very popular in a wide range of fields. The term for steampunk itself actually comes from an author who was trying to describe the books he was writing. He was describing something that pretty much already existed, but nobody had ever put a label on. And he's published an article in a magazine, glorified the name steampunk, and it stuck. It returns to basically a genre of literature that was basically Victorian science fiction that was then, everything from old Jules Verne up to things like the Difference Engine by Gibson, and a lot more modern books that are coming out today. I mean, every time I turn around, I see a new steampunk author that is coming online. And it is spread from being a genre that was primarily Victorian age science fiction in books to everything from, I've seen some really awful Harlequin steampunk romances.
Oh, those things are great. As she turned the clock on.
Yeah, and everything else in between. And the genre is kind of fuzzy and gray on the edges because you get a migration into what people term as diesel punk, which is getting past the Victorian era into more, I would say, 20s, 30s influenced costuming and themes.
And in some cases, post-apocalyptic, if you want to go into the diesel punk as well.
Yeah, and it is a wide range, and it stretches a bit early from the Victorian era as well. I've seen a number of steampunk influenced things which stretch back to the Napoleonic and slightly earlier. Oh, even that's starting to push it just a little bit. A good example of something that's kind of taking a steampunk influence and pushing the time period is our latest expedition of D'Artagnan and Company, complete with airships and everything else. Kind of pushing things just a little, but on the other hand, I happen to have enjoyed the movie. You put your brain in gear and it was lots of fun. But anyhow, as to what steampunk is, it's primarily literature, but it is spread into costuming. I belong to, our group is heavily influenced by creating steampunk costumes, which is basically take Victorian, and if you think it isn't Victorian enough, you're getting close. And then you add all sorts of fancy gadgets. Despite what everybody says, it is not all about the gears and the goggles. Everybody seems to think if you throw a pair of goggles on something, it's steampunk. Well, it can be.
Actually, I've been a group member now for 2 years, and I still don't own a single pair of goggles.
There's a very lovely song that became an unofficial anthem for our songs. Just glue some gears on it and call it steampunk.
Yeah.
Look it up, it's quite a good song.
Yeah, it's quite a giggle. And it gets into, there are no rules with steampunk, but on the other hand, there are things that are starting to really push the envelope. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. I came from originally a more accurate Victorian history group, and I have to admit, it took things like my wife quite some time to actually consider wearing the corset on the outside. as far as she was concerned, that's underwear. That doesn't get shown on the outside. It took a while till you wander into the steampunk genre, where the corset is the outerwear for a lot of ladies' garments. And then it gets into other influences and areas. I have seen all sorts of steampunk gadgets and decorations. In my house, it sort of looks like Victorian threw up in the house. But you get things that I consider. I have a very nice functioning pump organ, which also has a nice slot for a monitor and my home server. You can play the pump organ, or you can slide away the nice marquetry panel and look at the monitor and see what's happening on the internet. That's one of the things I've seen about a lot of steampunk, is you recycle things into new functionality. And you also take what we call techno, our modern technology, and kind of hide it in a more, I like to think, beautiful way. I have seen perfectly functional laptops that are encased entirely in hardwood. They are quite nice. If you ever get a chance, he's unfortunately no longer with us, but take a look at a site of a gentleman called Datamancer. Some of the stuff he's created is awesome. And then you get steampunk's influence has gone as far as housing. There's now a housing movement called Retro Victorian, which is primarily driven by the steampunk community and influence, and you get these nice Victorian era houses being recreated. Again, this is something that was happening a little bit before the term came out, but you get a lot of, steampunk people will look at the house like that and go, "Wow, I want one." And I've seen all sorts of things from steam-powered cars. You look it up, somebody's doing it somewhere. I mean, I didn't get it done for the show, but I have every intention of having a steampunk Dalek, probably for next year. It's a little more intensive project than I originally intended, which is also true. I can put it on the pile of 30 bazillion other projects. If you get into steampunk, lesson number 1, there is no such thing as too few projects, just not enough space to put them in. Now, I've kind of gone over it in a very brief way. In details, you get into where do you go and how do you do stuff for steampunk, and the history of where it's gone. And steampunk clubs are springing up all over the place. Calgary actually has 3 that I know of. Ours is the largest, but there are 2 other functioning clubs that are doing slightly different. One is primarily a literary club. They don't actually do the costuming. They are interested in the steampunk, in reading steampunk novels. It's sort of it's a book club, basically. And then there's another group which does something almost identical to what we do, but it's a slightly different crowd, and they do things on different days and stuff. And everybody has fun. And you get places like, Vancouver. I don't know how many clubs there are in Vancouver. There's quite a few. And then the big thing is there's no big rules as to you have to join the club to play. No, you have to be willing to put on the outfit to play, as far as I'm concerned. It's all about looking good. It's as my wife says, if you got a hat, if you think you look like a dork in a hat, you look like a dork in a hat. If, on the other hand, you think like you're awesome in the hat, you are awesome. And it's all about bringing it off with suitable panache. And figuring out what you want to do. That's kind of steampunk in a very quick overview. One thing I will mention, I have gotten the question of, what's the punk in steampunk? And it gets into, that's kind of a gray area. Some people say if you do the costumes really outlandish and far out, that's punk. If you're doing pure Victorian, then that's more steam and not punk. And then there's in between. It's one of those things where when the guy came up with the term, putting the punk in it kind of gave it a twist that may or may not actually apply when we think of what, if you think of what the classic punk was, it doesn't really apply as much to what's happening in the steampunk era. But on the other hand, I have seen people who definitely are punkish, and they are trying to make sure it does apply. That's one of the big things. It's no rules. Just have fun. And let's see, what have I missed?
I believe we're going into costuming next.
Let's see, we're doing pretty good. Quick
Well,
countdown.
actually, one other thing I can add to that is one term that we joke around in the group is you ask 10 different steampunks, what is steampunk? You will get 10 different answers. Because even though it's been around for a while, the genre is still evolving. The way I like to look at it personally is everyone builds their own definition as they go. If your steampunk view involves airships, air krakens, air pirates, you name it, go to town. It's your setting. Other people they stick more strictly to the actual historical record, where it's like no, the airships didn't exist at that point, but I like the costuming, or I like the sense of adventure. Then go with it. But then you get other people like us that take the historical record, rip it up, paste it back together, and throw the leftover bits out the window.
Some of us even go into like the sense of movies or comic book characters, and we give our own little twist to them. So it doesn't matter like what you think steampunk is. If you enjoy what you're making and creating for your costumes or for your persona character or even adopted character, go with it. Like it's really fun to experiment with different styles of leatherwork or gears, pipes, just to see what functions and what works, and putting it together to make something almost artistic in some ways.
The best description I can think of right now off the top of my head for anyone that is getting into the genre or has been in it for years, if you think you're doing it right, you're doing it right. That's as simple as I can put it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where one thing I should mention is, if you want to look at where to find out about steampunk, Google is always your friend. You can find steampunk in everything from, there's all sorts of television and film influence being shown that are steampunk influences. You get all sorts of artwork that has a steampunk flavor to it. And then you get people who are building, humongous steam-powered carriages for, the Burning Man and stuff like that. There's a couple of, there's a big one that's the size of, a motorhome that's called the Never Was Hall, which basically it looks like a huge caboose, and it's got these big wheels and it chugs along. It's an amazing piece of work if you ever get a chance to see it. If not, as usual, there's lots of pictures and stuff of it functioning on the internet.
Or give us the idea and give us a few years.
Yeah, no, I have trouble fitting the Dalek in my garage, much less that. Yeah, someday my car will park in my garage again, maybe. I think before we go into the costuming section, I'm going to throw it up. Does anybody have any questions on what steampunk is that they would like answered at this point? Anybody up there? We're all very quiet. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yes, the novel recommendations started on the literary.
Ooh, that's a tough one. It depends an awful lot on your tastes. Like, are you into hard technical science fiction or lighter reading?
I like costuming and would like to know what the ladies were up to.
Costuming and what the ladies were up to. That. Yeah, and one thing I would suggest is if you're looking for a good starter book, it's something I always do when I'm inquiring into something, is go peruse your local chapters, see what's there. And actually check your public library. You'd be surprised that the Calgary Public Library system has an amazingly good selection of steampunk novels and all sorts of flavors and varieties. That's the easiest way to find one, because if you check it out of the library and you don't like it, well, you can always check it right back in. But, it's one of those things that, there's a lot out there, and a good starter book. If you the Datamancer had some stuff, and there's various other authors, and it's also a question of what's currently in print. There's a lot out there. I mean, there are at least, to put it into perspective, you know how many role-playing games there are. There's at least 3 steampunk role-playing games currently out in production that I know of. And they're all entirely different, slightly systems and playing fields. And as for books, I think the average is, there's at least 10 or 20 new steampunk novels published every month.
What's your favorite book, Mike?
My favorite book? Oh, that's a tough one. I tend to read a lot. Oh God, I have to think about that.
Just pull one out of the air.
How about the last one you read?
Oh, I haven't had a chance to read in the last 6 months at least.
Well, what do you expect when you're trying to build a Dalek?
Yeah.
Actually, I just picked up two parts of a trilogy the other day at one of the exhibitors out on the floor. I was walking by and they mentioned, I saw this poster it was called Clockwork Heart. And I was like, okay, Clockwork, I'm going this way. So I go in and talk to the lady at the booth there, and she's like, yeah, it's the first part of a trilogy. The second one just came out, and it's called Clockwork Lies. And I was like, okay, I still like Clockwork. I keep going. And honestly, I looked at the cover art, took a look through a couple of the pages, and was like, okay, I have to buy this now, or else I'm going to stay in here all day reading this. So, so I'm looking forward to diving into those when the expo is over.
There's also a few comic books. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but if you look around, there is comic books. Say again? Yes, there's one. Go look around. You'll find really awesome art in a lot of these comics, where they're depicting airships and battles and field studies, and some of them go into actual military stats of like in-depth detail of how the military during Victorian times worked and how the British and the French could be battling at this time. It's just a great read if you come across any like good comics, if you will.
I'm currently...
Yeah. Yeah, but we got to forgive Marvel and DC.
Well, I'm currently reading Legendary. It's being written currently by Bill Willingham, and it's actually not bad. It's not like any particular deep story, but it's well drawn, and like high adventure.
Yeah.
And question again.
Any films in the genre?
Oh, I have to admit.
There is one movie that I can name off the top of my head. It's called The Mutant Chronicles. It's probably the closest thing that you'll see to a steampunk movie. It's based off of a role-playing game by the same name, Mutant Chronicles. It's got a good star cast, and their airships actually fly by the power of steam, which is very unique when you see how the pilot is looking out of a little view mirror and working on knobs to make sure that this boat doesn't fall out of the sky. And there's even nice little coal section where they shovel coal into it to keep the burners going so that they keep pushing steam out so they could fly and float and everything. And it's actually a really good movie if you want to get into an idea of what steampunk could be with a World War setting.
Yeah, I've also recommend Tai Chi Zero. It's a Chinese movie. Basically, imagine a action comedy with martial arts and steampunk.
Yeah, it's quite a giggle, and a good one is Wild Wild West. It's always a good go-to.
It's a good starter one right there.
And if you're into animated films, I would fully recommend Steam Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just curious, kind of representation, because one of the earliest ones that I remember seeing was at the end of Back to the Future. Doc shows up and he has like the Jules Verne type steam.
The train.
Yes.
I saw when I was very young, but I don't remember, was steampunk like the term around at the time? Because
Actually, no. That
coming around?
no, not that I know of. That I could say for sure. Like it's like, oh yeah, that steampunk was around for that long. No, from what I know, steampunk hasn't come around until like by recent standards until around like the late '90s. And early 2000s did it actually start to flourish and get more and more popular.
The term itself was coined in 1987, and I'm trying to remember when the third Back to the Future movie came out. 89. So it would have been just 90. So it would have been right on there. Now, admittedly, there had been basically he was coining a term to cover, a field that was rapidly expanding and existing. It was the usual thing, literally like this. A guy doing a press interview asked him to tell him what he was doing, what was the field, and he had to come up with something off the top of his head.
Kind of like the relationship between Blade Runner and the Gibson's like Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Cyberpunk came out a very, very similar way. It was sort of like, oh, what are you doing? And I got to have a term for this. And it's one of those things where the term fit well enough that everybody just took it and ran with it.
Although if you imagine, a lot of what we do is like Victorian era science fiction.
Yeah.
In that movie Stardust with Claire Danes and De Niro, there's like a little sort of
Stardust does have a definite steampunky feel for some feels. Heck, you got an airship. And yeah, it's one of those things where you can point to a whole lot of movies where there's bits and pieces, and it covers it. If you want to go into more detail, come talk to us in person, or do a little search on the internet, and you can find all sorts of information on history and how it's coming about. And if you're looking for books and movies, there's all sorts of stuff out there. I've got a little bit of a bibliography up here, but it's far from complete. It just, if you want to find out, look for it, because there's just such a wide range of information on this topic out there. It's hard to describe it in a small half-hour chunk. I'm trying to cover all the bits and pieces. But okay, one more question, and then we'll go on to. Yeah.
And the clubs that have it, like I think it's in Vancouver, they have a steam-driven clock.
Yes, the Verne steam clock.
Yeah.
I mean, it was done, they thought it was like a Victorian clock. It was just made more recently, like within the last 25, 50 years. Instead, it was on steam.
Mm-hmm.
And it just talks about all the things that people make and what they wear and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's a good overview.
Yeah.
Just don't go looking for the Vancouver Club, because that particular TV special killed the club. Basically, they died of overpopularity. The guys running it shut it down because they were volunteering their own personal house for the club, and all of a sudden they just had a ton of people in it. Within weeks of the event opening, the club itself ceased to exist. But that gets into, sometimes press is not a good thing, especially with something like that in a city the size of Vancouver. Apparently, they just couldn't handle the influx that they had. I mean, you try to keep growth on a reasonable rate. But yeah, that is the Fanboy Confidential article show. If you can find it on YouTube, is a good overview. They cover a lot of details and show a bunch of different stuff in different clubs across North America. And that's one thing I guess I haven't mentioned is if you go into the history of steampunk right now, if you try to name a country that does not have some sort of steampunk functioning groups, good luck. There might be no steampunks in Outer Mongolia, but pretty much everywhere else. I mean, we apparently, if you go down to Brazil, the steampunk community there is very active. And a lot of very organized. There's clubs in almost every little town and city down there. We had one of our Calgary members move down there and apparently was amazed by how organized it was down there. They do it totally different. It's far more regimented down there too. But again, everybody has their own flavor. However, at this point, we're probably going to have to switch to the next section, which is, okay, you've decided you want to become a steampunk.
What should you wear? Costuming is a very interesting concept because it goes any way that you use with your imagination. A lot of leather workers are people who make leather, sell, and make a great profit from the steampunk community because anybody who is in the steampunk community really enjoys wearing like the arm braces. We have a gentleman just I see right in front of us here who has a nice little arm piece there. So you can go into really big extremes, or you could even keep it very simple. Sometimes less is a lot more. If you slap some goggles on your head, on your hat, or even wear them around your neck or anything like that, and you say it's like, oh, now I'm totally steampunk. Well, you got to do a lot more work than just that. Painting, artistry, like you're making yourself into a very interesting, intricate character. Stuart here, he has a couple of characters that he has made where it's involving a professor and a doctor where this personality has been completely split, and he's got costumes made for each character that he has created. But you could even go into the idea, it's like, well, if you're a Marvel character fan and you want to do, or even a DC character where you say you want to do Batman, well, we have Batman steampunk characters running around where they have top hats and leather masks, and it's what you create and how you create and show yourself in the genre of steampunk, but putting your own twist of what you think they would look like in the Victorian setting of DC comic or of a movie of your choosing. We have Star Wars characters, DC, Marvel, we have movie celebrities or even game celebrities such as Lara Croft, or even certain games where people take their own twist into it, such as BioShock Infinite. Everyone can create a costume. It's just understanding that sometimes you don't have to overcomplicate things. You could keep things simple, or even if you want to go into the complication, you have to really figure out and plan and piece together what it is that you're going to wear and what you're going to show off to people.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of what you can take is if you look around, there's a couple of our club members today. One is dressed, has a nice bird mask, and is all in black. And then his wife happens to be all in white. And then if you take a closer look, well, if you've ever read Mad Magazine, Spy versus Spy, they have done Steampunk, Spy versus Spy. And you could see the light dawn. They were in the parade this morning, and you could see they were posing, and you could see a bunch of people all of a sudden click as to what they were, because they had a bomb that said bomb and dynamite in their hands, and it's like, and that's where it gets fun. That being said, okay, you're getting started, and let's say you're a poor starving student, or you don't have much time. How do you start? Well, if you're a guy, you're easy.
Value Village is definitely one of the best places to go when you want to find scrap leather material, costuming for dress. Even if you look hard enough, you could find some very fancy, awesome colors.
Yes.
If you have a will and you have the patience and the time and the way to just go out there and look for what you are imagining, then by all means, like if you see in your head, like I did for myself, that I was going to be Captain Pylon, I found all orange. I found the orange shoes. I found the orange hat. Like I found an orange hat, and unfortunately I wrecked the orange hat, so I had to just put a band on this one. Improvisation is a key element to creating costumes. You'll never find something that is going to be absolutely perfect, but if you try and you put in the effort, you'll find anything that you're looking for. You can even come into our club and talk to other people, and they could even hook you up with different websites, different stores that are found around the United States, Canada, and you go onto these websites and you could find like pith hats or, you know, adventurers uniforms, or even like whole costumes, gentlemen costumes, or even for the women, corsets, dresses, bustles, all of that. If you look hard enough, you can actually find a lot of things. Now, like Mike was saying, if you are a starving student, I mean, yes, and you have a budget of, say, $50. I have a $60 suit challenge from Value Village. I found a $60 suit, and I didn't have to spend any more than $55. And I found a whole suit that works perfectly for the steampunk genre, and it's just, even if you have some scrap material leather that you could get from, say, Tandy's Leather, you can sew those bits and pieces on there. You could cut them into the shape of gears, or you could even incorporate different things from, say, the like a garage sale. If somebody's selling candlesticks made out of bronze or copper, you could go to Home Depot and you could get sections of copper, or even different parts and pieces made out of PVC, get some paint and you could paint it up. A lot of things that you can work on won't cost you anything higher than $100 if you're under a certain budget. But if you have an idea of what you're looking for and you want to work with, you know, creating this character and making this character personified so you could show it off to everybody. I mean, like, you come up with some very creative ways to not only keep within a budget, but show that it's like, wow, you made that? That is awesome. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, most people, if you talk to them and explain things, amazingly enough, you can get your first steampunk outfit out of your closet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, as a guy, do you have a pair of dress pants and a dress shirt? Probably. Okay, add a vest. Hey, there's your first steampunk costume.
Do you have a random chain hanging around? Hook a chain onto the vest's pocket.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have a watch at the end, but
It looks good.
it looks good.
And as for the ladies, do you have a period sort of Victorian-looking blouse? Probably, because they have been in fashion in and out for a while. And a straight A-line skirt. There you go. You're started. Throw in a leather belt or a Victorian-looking purse, and you've got your first outfit. Now, as for what you do past that, it depends on your sewing skills and your equipment. You can buy everything at Value Village. You can get fabric cheap. There's lots of cheap places. Sari shops are your friend.
Fabricland is definitely
Fabricland. It depends where you are. Now, it's open season as to what else you can do for your costuming, and that's kind of costuming in a quick overview. Anything else, really? This is just plain costuming. We're not getting into advanced. You want to get advanced, go talk to my wife, who's one of the premier experts in Victorian costuming in the province. If you want to know it, she literally, once as a challenge, she was shown photographs and challenged as to how old they are. She won the challenge primarily because she said, "Oh, this is from 1887, and that's the fall." She quite often can place the season as well as the year.
Yeah.
And she reproduces most of that. But that's getting into an advanced session where, yeah, there's a lot of detail. You get into some fancy costumes with bustles, and there's lots of stuff. And if you're not a seamstress, you can buy all this stuff too. But again, that gets into a more advanced budget than what we're supposed to be covering today. We're covering basic starter costumes. Now I'm going to throw it out for questions again on the costuming section. Anybody else?
Yes. Oh, you can do whatever. I mean, like, absolutely. If you, like, yesterday I was wearing my traditional kilt, and I had just a simple vest, shirt on, and everything like that. But since my character Smithy is Scottish, I was walking around with a Scottish accent, and I was, "Hello everyone, how was everything going?" You know, and I just got into the character more and more as I kept playing around with it. The other thing that I have for my character Smithy is that he's a tinkerer, so he carries around tools. Last year I had tool belts and buckles and different things to carry, wrenches, hammers, and like fine tools that I had in my hat and everything like that. You can make your character more into flesh when you create the costume that you think he would wear. And if you put a lot of thought into like, okay, well, what's the functionality of his tool belt? How would this work in this scenario? Like if he's on an airship, how would he get up and down from certain places? You know, when he's not working, be wearing a kilt, which yes, I do enjoy the kilt. But what you bring into your character is what you bring into how you want people to see who you are as your character. So it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to, it's like, okay, well, my character is just, I'm who I am in this character. Well, good. If you are comfortable in how you wear yourself around other people, then you're doing everything right. You don't have to be limited to, okay, well, I'm wearing this bustle with this corset and this, so I must act of this time in this area and this genre. Well, no, you're modern time. You could do whatever you want.
Yeah, it gets into there's a variety of stuff where people, you know, I myself don't tend to do the persona thing too much, but there are people that do that a lot more, and there are groups that do that. I know there are live action role playing groups that are doing steampunk. There's one bunch up in Edmonton which have done some live action role playing in the steampunk era.
There's even a LARP group out in Saskatchewan where they make their weapons and they take their weapons and then they go into actual battles with opposing people or opposing teams. So if you watch some of the webcasts, like you'll have the one team is from Paris, France, and they're all dressed up in like Victorian time Paris affiliation. So you have Francois, who is like the rebel. He's just, I hate the dogs. And then you have like the English man who is like the general, and he's just like, yes, okay, so Pip, can you go get me a cup of tea? You know, they get into this character so much, and they role play it in a LARP setting. They go out into these parks, they go out into these fields, or even these areas where they can actually recreate a scene that they had planned to do for weeks, maybe even months, so that they could actually make like a short, in some cases, some of them did like a short documentary of, the War of 1862. That was one of the short webcasts that I saw where the LARPers actually presented it in a sense where it was like this was a massive historical event between the English and the people of the trading companies in Brazil. Like it's what you make of it. It's hilarious what people come up with, and it's fun to do.
Actually, going on with that, when I originally devised my first persona, Dr. Adler, he talked with a British accent, but then I got into a bit of acting where apparently I do the German accent very well. So
yeah, you do very well. Yes.
Dr. John Adler became Dr. Johann Adler. So things will change over time, but I guess it would be how comfortable you are with it yourself. If you feel comfortable donning another persona and going out and spreading it out to the world, go ahead.
Any other? On the back.
Yes, go ahead.
And funnily enough, I happen to know the answer to that. Do you live in Calgary? No. Oh, okay. In that case, it gets a little more tricky. There are there are actually 2 or 3 places in Calgary that carry semi decent mustache wax. One is a store over by Sunridge, which I'm trying to think of the name off the top of my head right now. which actually is a beauty supply salon, and they, among other things, carry a mustache wax called Clubman, which is fairly decent. It's a more cream-like wax, and I use it. I use that one. I have some of the more solid waxes as well. Actually, funnily enough, there was a gentleman who was in here earlier who might have a better answer because he's done a bit more research. I just happened to wander into. He told me to go to these shops, and I went and bought it. There's actually a place in Kensington that's going to be opening up in about a month, which is going to be specializing in men's barbering supplies, and they're going to have a wall of mustache wax. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
There is actually a couple of websites. Gentleman's Barbershop. They sell kits for mustache care and beard care and everything that you would need. And some of these kits will actually include mustache wax. None of them very expensive. But if you are interested in facial grooming and everything like that, they're definitely a good website to go to as well.
Yeah. Another suggestion. I don't know whereabouts are you from? What? Kelowna. I'm trying to think if Kelowna has an Italian section. No, it does not. Okay.
There are a couple of barber shops actually that if you ask if they carry mustache wax, they most likely will have mustache wax.
Barber shops are actually a good bet. That's why I was asking if you had an Italian section, because Calgary, it has expanded so that we have several other suppliers, but it used to be we have a section that was at one point known as Little Italy, and there are a grocery store and a barber shop there that both carried were your source of mustache wax. Although unfortunately, in my case, I had to do a little more research because they tended to have wax that would be very suitable for people with dark hair, but they didn't work so well with lighter hair. Wax that turns your mustache black just doesn't work for me quite that well. I needed to find some for the more fair hair. And they exist. You can get actually waxes that are toned to various shades these days. That's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this Kensington shop. Apparently one of the lines they carry is a whole, it looks like, if you remember ladies' makeup, you see all these tones. Well, apparently they have wax like that. I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like.
Any other questions before we move on to the Yes, hello? Well, sometimes you don't even have to, you don't want to limit yourself where it's like, oh, I would really love to get a course set. Save it for another time. If you can't afford a course set, there are actually, fun fact, you can go to a Value Village, and if you go through a few of the lingerie areas that they have at Value Village, you will come across a course set. And most of the time, it won't be any more than $10, $20. And that's the fun thing.
Yeah, and if you're looking at creating from scratch, any number of Butterick and the basic pattern companies have steampunk costumes in their collection. Some of them are kind of, you kind of need to fudge things a little, but they're pretty straightforward and on the whole functional patterns. And it depending on your body type, they work perfectly fine. And that's a good place to start. It depends on how accurate you're trying to be. There are more. Well, let's put it this way. My wife is a costumer, as I described. Now, if you know those 3-door rolly carts that you can pick up at Walmart and that,
yeah.
Currently we have 8 full of patterns, 3 of which are Victorian era. So yeah, you can find patterns out there, and there are some that are very simple to make. I would suggest, go to your local fabric store first and try to find that out. And if you're looking for costume materials, the bargain section in the fabric store will work fine. Or, as I said, you can go for sari shops, things, and they're usually in, I don't know whereabouts you live, but most cities will have a sari shop or a discount fabric shop where you can get stuff relatively cheap. would suggest you try to avoid the ugly sisters if you can. And for people who aren't seamstresses, that is Polly and Esther. It's cheap, but the end result is not worth it. If you can go for at least a cotton poly fabric, you're doing good. If you can go for, and it depends what you're creating for the outfit too. Sometimes the weight of the fabric makes a difference.
And most importantly, experiment. Like, the best part about creating your own costume is figuring out what works. Like, your body type, or even if that's like a specific thing that you're wanting to create. I mean, you could experiment and create in one way. If it doesn't work for this costume, you could save it for another costume. And, you know, practice. Like, sew something every day, just so that you could create something different or something new, so that you could actually add it to a different costume. Or even once you get to the point where it's like, well, I've got all of these things, what can I do? It's like, well, I'm just going to take this part from this one, this part from here, do this, throw this all together. And you'll be amazed on what you create after you've been doing this for, like, not even years, but a few months. Just never limit yourself or your imagination where you think it's like, okay, well, I'm going online and it's like, oh, I'd really love that. Well, make something that's similar or something that's close. But, you know, if yes, you're limited by, say, a budget or anything like that, I mean, like, do it within a realistic idea of like, okay, well, I've got all this scrap material. It may not be leather, but I could sew it and it would actually look like a really nice strap for this, or would work for this, to create something different.
Yeah, and a good suggestion is, and this gets back to Value Village and places like that, go buy yourself a couple of queen bed sheets used from Value Village. Make a mock-up out of it. You'd be surprised. You know, you can make the pattern work, then you know it works. Then you can think about what you want to do for spending more money on the material. And funnily enough, depending on the quality of the sheets, sometimes that turns into the outfit. I've seen that happen. You know, you get 100% cotton, 30 bazillion weave to the inch stuff used, and it turns out into this lovely garment that was just supposed to be the example, but all of a sudden, well, you have no reason to create anything better because it works just fine.
Yeah. And you don't have to do it all at once, right? You can do it just like one step at a time, slowly build up. Like, I'll admit I don't have a lot of artistic skill, but you just end up with like little knickknacks here and there, and you can slowly build a costume over time.
Yeah. And even if you, like, for Value Village, to get leather, just buy a leather jacket. It's run down, it could be dirty, some sandpaper, and make it even like rougher. If you want the material from it so that you could actually add it to something else. I know this one girl, she actually took a leather jacket and she made it into an amazing corset. So you can find material and you could find patterns anywhere, and you don't have to limit yourself because you have such a wide range of creativity with making characters or making costumes.
And even like the thing with artistic talent too, it's like the nice thing with steampunk is if you screw up, it's aged.
It's a design feature.
It's a design feature. You did it on purpose, of course.
Yeah, and you can do stuff anywhere. And a good example, and again, my wife describes this, is, okay, you want to make yourself a corset. Where do you go? Here's an interesting challenge. How about Rona? You can make an excellent corset from Rona. You get the canvas drop sheets. You get the metal strapping that they're going to discard for free. They will have cording. They have some excellent glues for sealing. Pretty much, you'll need to buy the thread for your sewing machine someplace else. But everything else you can make from Rona.
And very fun fact about that, price tag would probably be under $30.
Yeah. Your biggest price item on that particular thing is the cost of the canvas drop sheet. Everything else, like the scrap metal, is cheap. You will have to invest in a pair of snips to cut the metal, but other than that, it works just fine.
Yes.
We found a place here, the other day we were just fooling around town, we found a place called Fabric Depot.
Oh yes, I love Fabric Depot.
You walk into that place, the aisles are like 1.5 wide, it is so packed with stuff, there's appliques all over the place. If you can think of something, I'm sure they have 10 of them inside you haven't even thought of.
Oh yeah.
And
My credit card winces every time we go near that place.
You talked about making a demo one. What we've done, or we're trying to do with our daughter and I, and, well, you have to go friendly with the person to do it. But basically, strip down to next to nothing, wrap yourself up in saran wrap.
Yeah.
On where you want the pattern to be, what you want it to be, take it apart, off of you, like cut it off of you, and there you got a perfect pattern.
You got a perfect pattern. Funnily enough, I can suggest that there's a number of ways you can make a basic body pattern that works really well. One thing I will suggest, saran wrap will work. There's also duct tape. The only problem with those two materials, they do tend to shrink a little because you've stretched them on. If you can get old-fashioned butcher's tape in a big roll, wet that, and you can make a perfectly fitted body form out of it, and then you can shape your stuff on it.
And it won't
Just
shrink.
be aware, especially if you were body conscious, when you make this thing, it is an exact double of you. You leaves nothing to the imagination. You can see exactly where all the wrinkles are. But on the other hand, it is one of the best methods. What you need is a cheap cotton T-shirt that you're willing that's going to be toasted, and then you just wrap yourself up in the butcher's tape. It is the best method that I have found for creating a perfect body double. It came out of a couturier fabric person in New York. Apparently developed the technique, and I have seen it used in a number of cases, and it makes a pretty good. It's fairly simple. It takes a couple of days because, of course, you have to wait for drying time and stuff. Like it's a day to apply, then you have to carefully take it apart and let it sit and dry, and then you've got this perfect body double that's actually fairly rock solid as well. Although I've heard people fill it full of foam as well to reinforce it to make it last longer. But some people, I have one person I know that created one of these, has it, uses it, but carefully covers it with a drop sheet every time she doesn't want to look at it because she doesn't really like looking at what she really looks like. But other than that, did we have one more question over here? Oh, okay. Oh, one in the back there.
If I could make a suggestion, every major city you go to, they generally have theater groups that have costume sales.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's another one for the lady over here as well, if she wants to take that as a note. There's the costume shop downtown where every year they'll actually get rid of all of their movie quality costumes for really reasonable prices. There's also like generic costume places like Chuckles or even what's it called? Don's Hobby Shop. Yes, thank you. Don's Hobby Shop, where you can like get some lower quality, but you can actually add to it to make it better quality, so it lasts a lot longer too.
Yeah, and one other thing, and this is, if you're not in a hurry, the day or two after Halloween, you can get a whole lot of stuff for real cheap. Especially, funnily enough, Value Village usually pulls in a lot of stuff which is not bad quality. I wouldn't call it great by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't call it bad either. And you can get lots of little knickknacks and things that pretty up your costume. I picked up a whole schwack of pocket watches, fake pocket watches last year for like $1 a piece. And they went on to, actually, funnily enough, a corset that's going to be all pocket watches under construction. And it would have been expensive with real watches, but these decorative ones, it's doable.
Makes it possible. But I think we could move on right now to the prop making, because he's been waiting so patiently to talk about his wonderful, wonderful creations here. So if we want to move on, let's give the floor to Andrew here.
Okay, so yes, moving on to props. You've learned about steampunk, you've built your basic outfit. Now it's time for the fun, shiny bits. Starting off with basic props, best I can think of is what do you want, like a pocket watch or a rain or a monocle. All these you can buy pre-made, not a problem. Or you can have some fun and go visit your local thrift shops. The best places that we get for our material, there's one in town. It's called Ribtor Supply Warehouse, or as I like to call it, the land where old parts go to die. This is our gold standard. We go there at least once a year, if not more, and we never leave empty-handed. There are pieces there that range from pre-World War II up to almost modern day. And you will find gears, gauges, brass, you name it, it's there. Another excellent place to check is any thrift shop. Value Village, World Serve just in Calgary area.
There's even a handful of places, what would you call them? They're like just markets. You could go to flea markets or even to farmers markets, different places like that. The Crossroads Market just in Ogden has booths everywhere that sell antique chandeliers or doorknobs or different things like that you could easily incorporate into, hand pistols or into gauntlets, arm pieces, rings even. Different things that you could go with. Actually, there was a man that I talked with yesterday, and he has machined gear rings that all work in conjunction with one another. So you could have 2 or 3, or you could even have 5 or 6 of them working in unison, where one gear will spin, but all of them will work. And he's just over in the Big 4 building. You should definitely check his art out.
Actually, one great find that I personally had from the Value Village was this. Some of you have probably seen me walking around wearing this today.
It's a glorious mustache.
Yes. This started off as, I believe it was a hairpiece. I'm not sure. It was a hairpiece on a pin that we came across during one of our costume tours, and I bought it on a joke. I think it was $2. And all I've done is twisted the wire around to make it a mustache shape, added, I believe it's called swimmer's tape. I'm not 100% sure, but added this just so I could wear it around the face. And all in all, that cost me about $3. 4 if I include a little bit of crazy glue that I put on there to touch up some things. So you can find inspiration anywhere. Inspiration for props from anywhere. Like even something like this bottle. Take this, it's just generic plastic bottle, right? What if it's not? Take the label off, give it a paint job, put it on a piece of wooden doweling. Next thing you know, you have a vial full of some kind of concoction.
Or even air pumps for, or air tanks for your steam-powered backpack, if you're a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
You could also look at your local hardware store to see if they'll often have specials and things like just simple pipe fittings and things like that. Like for a few cents, you can get all sorts of different copper knobs and things like that to add to your costume to make further props and enhance it.
And just one last thing, one last prop find that I had before I pass Doc to talk about his showpieces there. Whenever you see pictures of Victorian gentlemen, often 90% of the time they will have a cane. A great place to find canes, believe it or not, Walmart. Curtain rods. The telescoping curtain rod, you take that, comes in 2 halves, there you got 2 canes right off the bat. But anyway, Doc here has some beautiful examples of what you can do with a little bit of paint.
So I have this little specialty. So I mean, let's say you want to do something on the cheap, but you don't have a lot of money. So easy way to do things is kind of modifying kind of dollar store water guns or just cheap water guns I've done. So for me, this is like a old crappy plastic crossbow gun I got at a dollar store. It came with 2 even, so even better. And just simply repainting it. I use a special technique using wax paint. So what I generally do is I take the initial plastic gun like this. I use some sandpaper to rough it up. After it's been roughed up, I just apply some simple spray paint, black spray paint to it. So it gives it a black undercoat. And also, black spray paint sticks to like anything as long as it's like a little roughed up. And so it's really handy. Now, if you're going to use the black spray paint, I generally recommend using a nicer black spray paint. So this is actually a little more expensive graffiti quality black spray paint I got from an art supply store. I think it was like $10 as opposed to like the $7 you get.
But it's worth it.
It's so worth it because it dries on much thinner than the regular spray paint. And then I buy a few bottles of some wax metallic colored paint. The two big brands out there are one's called Rub and Buff, and the other one is called a Goldfinger. I like Goldfinger a little better because Rub and Buff can sometimes, because it's wax, it sometimes has to have a solvent in it, and sometimes in Rub and Buff the solvent will separate. So you have to kind of like mix it a bit to get the right consistency. And it's non-toxic paint, and all you do is use your finger or a cotton swab or a small brush or something, and you just rub it on haphazardly. It actually looks better if you do a thinner coat and actually a more haphazard kind of look within kind of the lines of the natural lines of the water gun. And it gives it a nice aged look as opposed to just kind of, the general look is people just spray paint gold paint on it, which gold spray paint's expensive, and it looks really cheap because it's glossy. So doing it this way, you get a nice, better aged look. And if you screw up, as I said, you can sand it again. It's got more antique character, and you can just redo it again. I have a few examples up here. The big, so this is a three-pronged dart gun I guess you got at Walmart. Still works. Just showing the different stages of it. So just the normal gun, the black spray painted with it sanded, and then just painted over with the wax, the paint. And then this is just like a before and after that I have. This is just my general day-to-day steampunk gun. And I'll pass it around for you guys to take a look. And I think all in total, I do this in like less than $20 in like about half an hour each. So you can like mass produce these and be a big gunslinger or something. And it's a really simple way to do it, and everyone can get involved and have some fun. Here, I'll pass them around and you guys can take a look.
Yeah. And if you want to go a little bit further, I tend to go a little bit more for a slightly more realistic look.
Or even more eccentric, depending on how you see it.
This particular one is a combination of some clock parts, some lamp parts, some copper and brass tubing that I got at Rona, and the base is a decommissioned shotgun. This is, I find, I like using real gun stocks as the base of the weapons I create. I just find it looks and feels better. Unfortunately, the batteries are dead, but this actually has what's called EL wire wired into it with a sound sensor, so that if I cock and shoot the trigger, it sets off the EL wire in a flash in the front. I think overall this probably cost me about $75 worth of materials. Now that's a question of finding it in the right place. I mean, it's like coming up we have the Springbank Antique and Gun Show, which, funnily enough, my wife and all the ladies tend to go over to the antique section, and I get stuck, I go cruise the gun show section. But a lot of the gun dealers sometimes will have the decommissioned stocks sitting there. They're just getting rid of them for cheap because they don't have much of a use for them, or they're hoping, they sell them for people who have projects. It's a good place to pick up stuff like that, and then it's a good start. Because, let's face it, if you're trying to create a firearm, and you don't want to use the plastic, the wood stock is a good base. Pretty much anything else you stick on top of that will look a lot nicer. Up to and including, I have done one with a curtain rod. I had my dinosaur gun, which was hooked up to a humongous backpack and actually a set of steam pipe hosing hooked into the gun, and the gun itself was a curtain rod. And I got asked several times by the people, the good inspectors here, whether or not my gun could shoot. which tells me, well, aside from being mildly annoying, being asked this every 30 feet by yet another person in a comic expo outfit, means I did a good job in making it look right.
You only wish it could fire.
Yeah. Admittedly, I would strongly suggest that you don't take the approach I took for the backpack that went with it. I used a old wooden phone case, a copper fire extinguisher on a World War II issue aluminum frame. Net result. This thing,
2 weeks.
no, it still exists. I've got it down in the basement.
Still, it's really sturdy.
But I had
made.
bruises from wearing it because it's heavy. Sometimes using the real materials makes things a little bit too real.
That's why I like plastic sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially
One
for
thing-
conventions if you're walking around all the time.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
When you start getting into into prop making for steampunk, which, well, all of us up here love to do to more degrees than others. Never throw anything away. You will become a pack rat. You will. But it's you will find you'll be walking through a thrift store like we just did a costume tour not too long ago where we went to a thrift store called World Serve. I walked in and everyone goes to look at the costume bits and I look over, it's like, ooh, brass. Lots of brass. I walked out with about $30 worth of brass parts. I had
Crown
no idea-
Surplus, actually, they have 2 giant buckets of brass buttons, labels, uniform pins, you name it. It's just 2 huge buckets full of it that you could just grab out by the handful and you don't have to pay anything more than like $30 for it.
When I walked into World Serve for that, I had no idea what I was going to be doing with some of these parts, other than I know if I don't buy it now, I will be kicking myself for not buying it later. But
Yeah.
a lot of these parts, you'll collect parts as you go, and then down the road you'll be working on a project where it'll be, well, how am I going to use this? And you're like, oh wait, that part that I picked up X amount ago, and you
Yeah.
go dig it for it. It's like perfect. And if it doesn't work, fudge it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for, like, even for my sword here, the finger guard is actually just an old handle for a drawer.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can find. And the locations for bits and pieces, it's thrift stores, your Home Depot, hardware stores, and my personal favorite, estate sales. You'd be amazed what you get. And every once in a while, especially, you get really, really lucky. A couple of years ago, my wife went to an estate sale, because I told her, it looks like there's a bunch of clocks in the pictures. Go take a look. It was an old watch and clock repairman who had died. And everybody was buying the nice fancy ones that were on top for horrendous amounts of money. But the gruddy boxes full of gears and clock pieces in the bottom, nobody wanted. My wife got them for $20. I have 6 rough totes of clock bits.
And
Well,
we have,
I should say I had 6 rough totes of clock bits. I've still got a lot. But, yeah, it's every once in a while, when I can remember sometimes giving these people the tour of the clock collection. And that was just a lucky score. You just have to keep an idea what you're looking for. It's like I mentioned that pump organ that works as a computer server. That was free for the hauling away. Circa 1887, in excellent condition, other than the fact that the bellows needs a little bit of repair, which someday I'll get to the top of the project list and I will actually do that. You know, it's not a hard fix, it's just fitting it into the schedule of other projects. You know, you keep looking and keep your mind open, because you'd be amazed what you can create out of something that looks absolutely nothing like the end product. And, you know, it's up to your imagination as to what you want to create. Props is one of the funnest things I find with steampunk, because you can do anything. I'm creating a steampunk Dalek. I have another project which is a steampunk steam car. Well, it's a replica steam car which is going to be built on a pedal bike frame. That I've got plans for. It's under construction, and once it's finished, it's probably going to be in. I'm hoping to have it in the parade next year. But we'll see what happens. So now I think we should. Want to throw it up for questions? Or?
Yeah, any questions at all for, yes?
Over there.
You were talking about the wax paint. What do you find the main advantages over that, over just like a cheap acrylic metallic paint from Walmart?
So most of the cheap acrylic metallic paints will fill in everything perfectly. And steampunk, you generally want a more aged look to it. And also wax paint tends to follow textures. So when you fill it, you'll still see a lot of the texture of the material under it. So because you've sanded it and roughed it up, you'll get like this, it's kind of like a damaged old brass type look, as opposed to shiny, brand new, gold colored gun, which kind of chips easily sometimes.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention with talking about the paint, so the wax paint's nice in that you get that nice texture, but it does rub off very easily, so you have to do a clear coat varnish on top. And usually I just recommend just a cheap matte varnish. They're all about the same and works quite well to make it more durable.
What kind of store do you usually buy the wax paint at?
I usually get them at art supply stores, so the few that I go to Mona Lisa Art Supply and Sketch Art Supply. So they're both good supplies. But most of the art stores, if you go in there and you're like, I'm looking for this, they can order it in for you, or you can even pick it up online. I think they're on Amazon too. You can get the 20 pack of Rub and Buff for I can't remember, it's $30 or something like that. So yeah.
Just also bear in mind, Michael's doesn't always carry what you're looking for. So if you go to Michael's, you may luck out. But Michael's is another good place. But there's also the Kensington. There's the one down in...
Kensington's closed. They're moving somewhere else.
Oh.
They're in the south now,
Oh.
north of IKEA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I stand.
Anyways, yeah, Michael's. So you can get it at Michael's, but you pay the Michael's margin.
Yeah.
So everything at Michael's is going to cost way more unless you have a coupon. And the coupon only works for maybe 1 or 2 items. Because if you have the coupon, then you can pay the regular price that everybody else will charge normally. Michael's is okay for if you're looking for art supplies and you have no budget, because everything's going to cost more there. So I mean, that's something you can keep an eye out for. They do have a lot of good little steampunk knickknacks though, in kind of their beading jewelry section and in their scrapbooking section. Strangely enough, Tim Holtz makes lots of good quality clock hand pieces and clock faces that are good for making props. But again, that's if you have some disposable income you're willing to spend. And then, even then, it's just parts that you still have to modify or change to some extent.
Do you have any suggestions for type of glue to use? I make steampunk jewelry, and I'm always having trouble with it falling apart.
Holy Trinity.
Yeah, there is actually a really good substance. It's an acrylic, or not acrylic. You have to mix them together. And thank you, epoxy. Yeah. There is an epoxy. It's called Weld Bond, and it's probably the strongest glue. It actually has a chemical steel in it that when it's reacted, it activates and it actually bonds harder than the steel would hold. So I have this at where I work, and I use it on little projects that I work on. And I even have projects where I don't need to weld it anymore because I've got this Weld Bond, and it sticks 10 times stronger than any little super glue material that you can come across. But that's one suggestion.
One suggestion. It's another couple possibilities are a glue called E6000, which is not bad. You can't use it in a hurry. It has setup time. You need at least 4 hours of your project sitting there. And finally enough, if you in the goop family, the best is what's called marine goop, and its big advantage is it is designed to function underwater, and it's UV resistant, which means it's better than most. The thing that I strongly suggest people stay away from with a 3,000-foot pole is any of the Crazy Glue family. Crazy Glue is designed to stick things together for a short period. It's not designed to take stress in any direction other than the direction where it's stuck together. And it's UV breakdownable. Then after about 2 weeks, Crazy Glue starts to die.
Yes.
Yeah, some of them are better than others. It all depends on how, crazy that kind of family is if you're doing stuff where you want it to stick quickly.
I also like the marine goop as well, so because it's flexible. So it doesn't make a seal as hard, so that if you do drop something or it does wobble a little bit, it'll be able to take that strain. While a lot of some of the harder glues, like even the epoxy, if it takes just like the wrong type of strain, it'll actually break off or damage your product because it's like so solid.
That's the black sheep of the group. I use Crazy Glue.
Now, Crazy Glue is good.
Shun.
Now, Crazy Glue is good if you're looking for something in a pinch because it works right away. Most of these other glues that we're mentioning take time to get a good bond. So, like marine goo will set in about like 15 minutes, but like for it to get a good bond, it takes 24 hours. The epoxy takes quite a bit of time to solidify, and so does the E9000. So, but Crazy Glue is like, I'm at a costume show and this broke. What do I do? Like, there you go. You fix it right away.
Yeah. And it all depends on what you're gluing together too. My wife has discovered there's, it's her replacement. She doesn't bother with hot glue anymore. It's called Fabri-Tac. It functions like hot glue, but you squirt it out. You squirt it out like you're gluing, but it has the same setting properties as hot glue and actually seals better. Fabri-Tac will keep together, whereas hot glue, if things get warm enough, well, especially in the summer, I've seen hot glue projects that became non-projects because it got hot enough to soften the glue, whereas the Fabri-Tac, once it's set up, it's set, and as my wife says, no more burnt fingers. Okay, any other questions? Okay. We're actually running well ahead of schedule here.
What time do we have?
It's just after 3.
Oh, how much time do we have left?
We had 2 hours. We started at 2. Yeah, we got 40 minutes yet. Okay, now next question. Given that the size of the audience, we actually have enough, small enough group, we probably can have you come up here, and if you want to take a look at some of the stuff we have, and we can. Like I say, if you have any questions, you want to come up and talk to us in person, we can do that. We're actually finishing quite well ahead of schedule, but we kind of went through a lot of stuff a lot quicker than originally planned, which sort of happens with these things sometimes.
Actually, one thing that I think would be pretty fun, since we've got plenty of time, if anybody has a costume that they're wearing right now, to even just come up right here and even explain like what they used, what they made with and everything like that, to really share with everyone else, like what the props that they have and everything like that. If you want to come up to the front, we could give you a mic and you could actually explain what your costume is, your character, or what you're working with, or how you put it all together, if you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's wants to come up and share.
Well, we can start first. Should I maybe I'll start with just my costume. Everyone does steampunk in kind of the Western tradition, so I did it more of an Eastern tradition. So when I create a costume, I usually start with a costume piece. I'm not super creative. I'll go out somewhere random and then that looks really cool. I'll turn that into something and then build a costume around that. So for this one, I ended up at an estate sale, found a kimono with just this overcoat over it. Doesn't look really all that steampunk or anything, but I'm like, you don't see very many steampunk samurais. So from there, I built on top of it. Obviously, samurai, you have to have a sword. So that was the first thing I thought about. And at conventions like these, you see the cheap sword with a katana handle, cheap umbrella with a katana handle. And so I've modified a katana handle umbrella with an EL wire, this is electroluminescent wire, that will light up. And then just kind of made it look more metallic-y, old-fashioned-y. And what's nice is it has an action feature, and it opens up like that. For the rest of the costume, I just bought a cheap hakama off the internet. So it's the samurai pants, and some cheap tabby socks, and a pair of the kind of Chinese sandals. And I put together a steampunk kind of samurai-looking costume. I had the old goggles kicking around. I picked it up. Like, you end up accumulating things, so then this has become part of the costume, and there you go.
My costume,
it hurts the eyes.
I came across this beautiful coat, and after running around the entire thrift store going, I'm an adult, you can't stop my happiness, they all said,
While
"Keep going."
wearing a purple skirt.
Yes, a purple skirt was needed for it. I decided, well, I want to do something all orange. Now, they've coined me as, a pylon, or I'm screaming without saying anything because my orange coat is just blinding everybody around me. But one of my best, I didn't know what I was going to be. I just wanted to be all in orange. But one of my friends actually said, so you're that tuxedo-wearing guy from Dumb and Dumber, all in orange, and it's steampunked. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly who I am.
And the next person in the sound prompt said, hey, a traffic cone.
I actually got offered by a couple of the security guards, like, well, if we need you for the traffic, then, you got the job.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, and it. Now, admittedly, it'll be a little harder to see my outfit. This was created by my wife for our annual Alice in Wonderland, and the vest itself is a Jabberwocky vest. If you look, she cut out individual shield shapes and sewed them on. There are, I think, some 2,000 odd shapes sewn onto this vest out of silk. And the
If you have a will, there is always a way.
there is always a way. And the shirt I'm wearing is a reproduction, approximately 1864 men's shirt, made from a period pattern. Then again, I get cheap out. The pants I'm wearing are sort of generic from. I think I got them from the Bay. But the upper part, it's some fairly interesting, intricate costuming that I have on. And as for my accoutrements, well, one thing I have is my nice pocket watch. This is a modern reproduction. It's a, it says Charles Herbert Paris, but I'm pretty sure it's a made in China special. I also own a number of period pocket watches from the 1860s through the 1890s, but I usually don't bring them out. The 1890s one occasionally, just because they're collector's pieces.
Yeah, if you do come across an antique pocket watch, take drastic measures to take care of it. I had recently accidentally dropped my antique pocket watch that was given to me by a friend. And it took me $500 to get it repaired because they had to ship it off to 4 different places for all of these parts to be specially made just to be put into this pocket watch. So take good care of what you buy.
Yeah, and that mentions something which we haven't covered is I'm a big fan of if it still works, don't take it apart for the pieces. There are people, steampunks out there who are putting a big dent in the existing old typewriters that out there because they're just repurposing the keys. I'm a big fan of if the typewriter still works, I'm not going to break it. If the watch or clock still works, I don't break it. But if it's broken, at that point I feel aye matey, let's go raid and get these pieces because I can make other stuff out of it. And for that matter, if I have the gears, I can make things that use the gears in a whole and new and different way. I mean, I have a pith helmet which has a brass cannon on it and a spinning whirly gig, and it looks quite impressive. And it's all repurposed from various and sundry different items. But I don't believe in breaking things. If I can recycle stuff, I will. But if it still works, I'm not going to touch it. Or if I touch it, it's just to fix it. Because part of my skills is I am a leather worker and woodworker, and I can fix a lot of these things that, I may not be able to fix the clocks as well as I would like to, but I know people who can. And it gets into that. And as for other props, sky's the limit for what I can do for costumes. I mean, I've got, and again, this was an estate sale find, real Oxford robes, which, and funnily enough, to go with it, I have a proper professor's cap, which came from Value Village. My wife was walking along the aisle and she stopped dead because she saw the cap sitting there. It was within all their usual, Halloween reproduction stuff, and it just didn't look right. Turns out, yes, I have Oxford robes with a Cambridge professor's cap.
Sacrilege.
All he needs now is the Yale brand tennis shoes.
But, and they make an excellent outfit. But, it's all finds that we just happen to come across. And half the time, people are getting rid of stuff like that, don't care or don't value it as much as we will. It's amazing what you can find used and going for cheap. And, yeah.
Well, I'm going to stand up for this one. There. A, because I can show off the full outfit, and B, because, well, I've been sitting down for a while.
Now, as you can see, Stuart here is a prime example of the adventurer.
Be glad I don't have anything to throw at you right now. All right. So, yes. Oh, perfect. Thank you, mystery hand from the side. All right. So, yes, this is my explorer outfit. Professor Ignatius Quibblesworth. The only reason I named him Professor of that is so when you short it to Professor IQ, because I eventually plan to put a brain slug on the pith helmet. And anyone who's seen Futurama, you know what happens when you get a brain slug. As for the outfit itself, the code itself came from Gentleman's Emporium online. As one of our former group members used to say, eBay is my tailor. The pants themselves, just generic khaki pants. I got them at George Richards, I do believe is the store name. The vest was actually made as a birthday gift from a friend who was a seamstress. My pocket watch, this actually has some memories to it. I was a fan of Full Metal Alchemist long before I ever got into steampunk. So one year, actually here at the convention, walking around, I came across the pocket watch, which, if you open it, not only has the Elric crest, also has "Don't Forget." So this became, when I joined the steampunk group, this became my first steampunk item. It has been in every outfit I have made since. And luckily, my friend was able to make a little hole in the pocket, so when I have it in, you can see. As for other little props, because out of the group, I don't have goggles, I don't carry a gun. All the personas and outfits that I make are professionals. One's a medical doctor, one's kind of like an underworld mafia don, and this gentleman, the professor, is an idiot. So what I do is I like to come up with just the quick little props that I can come up with. In this pocket, in this chain, a bosun's whistle actually works. Picked that up for about $5, I do believe. Over in this pocket is a monocle. I got this, just your cheap little costume jewelry monocle. The chain actually came from Michael's. And also, I don't know how many people can see this, but this pin, I'm assuming a lot of people here have seen Back to the Future, right? Okay. 1.21 gigawatts. And this was actually given to me by one of the people at the Michael J. Fox Foundation booth 1 year. He liked my outfit so much, he took this off his badge and said, "Here." I was like, oh my God.
Lucky bastard.
Yeah. And then, of course, to top it all off, the mustache.
Oh, please put it on. You got to put it on.
Okay, I'll put the mustache on. Takes a little working around, but... And then we throw on the pith. We're ready to go adventuring. And there are, like I said, out of the group, I love coming up with the cheap, quick little props that you can do in under 5 minutes. One thing I love is one of my main personas, Dr. Adler. He has what he calls the Adler Archive. This is how many people here have seen Warehouse 13? Okay. Basically, he owns his own Warehouse 13. So what I like to do is I came across these tiny little chests at the dollar store. Each one was $1. No modification needed. They looked perfect. I got those, combined that with some old spice jars that I got at a flea market for $6. And it's like, yep, I can make this work. I came up with, okay, well, what do I want to put into these for samples? Thinking, well, go with the classics. Vampire, werewolf, right? For vampire, I was over at my friend's house and was like, I need to get some ash to put in this. He just looks at me, looks at the fireplace. Help yourself. I was like, okay, cool. Now I need werewolf hair. And I look at him and his long flowing locks, and then I reach for the scissors. When he stopped running, but it's just simple little things like that. Just the simple little things you can come up with. Another sample that I have, actually, all 3 of these samples will be on display at the assemblage booth. Please feel free to stop by, take a look. We have cards, we don't really have pamphlets, but we will get those eventually, I'm betting. But one of the third sample is this green, I believe it was a dish soap sample pack. This beautiful green color. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this now? Because I put it in the jar and I'm not taking it back out. It's like, well, how many people here have read H.P. Lovecraft? I know of Cthulhu. I'm like, yes, I can make that work. Then all that was left to done is type up some quick little old-fashioned looking tags, print them off the computer, cut them out, get some twine. Boom, there's three different props. And I think the grand total for all 3 was under $20. And I've kind of, the other group members know this now, that I've kind of gone box crazy, I guess you could say. I collect cases that I can use for different projects. I now have a stack of cases at home and a stack of brass bits, and I need help. I'm running out of room. But yeah, just variety. Variety, anything you can think of, either you can make it or modify it to work. It's the sky's the limit, like, quite literally in some people's cases with some of the designs we've seen online.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can find. And one thing I actually forgot to mention, because I don't think of it as a prop, but it actually is. My nice bowler hat.
My lovely top hat.
Yes. And you can get cheap reproductions from the Halloween stuff. That's a good place to start. Mine, on the other hand, comes from a local Calgary hat maker who's been in business, Smith Built Hats, if you ever heard of them. They make all the white hats for the Stampede, among other things. And this lovely hat runs at about $95. But it's custom made and sized to fit. And they have lovely top hats as well. And if you're willing to spend the money for their top quality top hat, it'll run you around $400. You can get a basic top hat for about $150 from them, which is it's not quite as good a material, but still looks better, and it's way better than a lot of the stuff you'll find at a costume shop. But it's one of those things where if you pick and choose what you spend your money on, sometimes getting good quality items is worth it.
Also, thrift shops and flea markets and estate sales are your friend for looking for nice hats. And then I noticed a lovely lady here is wearing a top hat fastener. And those are actually, looking on the internet, there's patterns and different designs you can make, either with some basic leather working or craft foam, making your own little mini top hat fastener from either some hair clips or even those, what is it called, the holds your hair back, it's a ring.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing that simple materials can sometimes give you pretty good results. My wife recently made a pirate hat for a play production that's currently running, and it actually was based on cardboard, among other things. Looks great. It's good for the stage. I wouldn't suggest it for long-term lasting because it's probably not going to last, it'll last the run of the production. But that's another thing you look at when you're creating your props. How long do you want to have your prop around? You just want something for the weekend? You can probably make it fairly cheaply out of a number of materials that'll last, it'll be good enough. And then you can look at making it out of quality stuff later when you want to upgrade. It's like, I actually started out with the cane made from the curtain rod. I now have a proper hardwood cane that's a antique that dates to probably 1890. But that depends, it's all what you want to get when you want to get it. But anyhow, at this point, I think if anybody wants to come up and talk to us, they can. And other than that, we thank you for your interest. And hopefully we have entertained you and not bored you too much.
I know, it's a little bit of a commute.
Anything you can think of for footwear, Mike?
As usual.
Are you
Always
looking
have
at ladies or men's? Men's?
At least made it up.
A good
Are you here all
basis
weekend?
is a place like, are you from Calgary or? No. Well, if you go for a military surplus store, you can get men's dress shoes